Anin, everybody. Hello. Welcome to a little oral history on the Atlantic salmon of Lake Ontario. My English name is Gary Pritchard. My Indigenous name is Ginu, which translates in English to the Golden Eagle. I'm from Esquijamung First Nation, which actually translates in English to Curve Lake First Nation, just north of the city of Peterborough. I'm a member of the Niji clan or the White Otter clan. And I send greetings on behalf of my community to all of those who are out there listening and wanting to learn today. Um, it is late summer or early fall, depending on your worldview, and to me, it is salmon season. I've always felt a connection to the salmon, even as a young child, and as well as to the waters and tributaries, as well and the shorelines of Lake Ontario. I didn't know why I had this connection for the longest time, and hopefully I will share some oral history of our people to show you why. I would tell my family it's time to go fishing, and I could smell the salmon coming, and often I was right. But did you know the salmon that you harvest today is not the native ones that used to inhabit our waters? So where to begin? Our history or our storytelling tells us that the Michi Saagiig people are known as the people of the Big River Mouse, or also known as the Salmon people, who occupied and fished the north shore of Lake Ontario and all the various tributaries that emptied into the lake. So you know a little bit about our people. The Michi Saagiig people participated in the signing of 18 treaties from 1781 to 1923 to allow the growing number of European settlers to establish in Ontario. Pressures from increased settlement forced the Michi Saagiig people to slowly move into family groups around the present-day First Nations that you know as the Williams Treaty First Nations. It was told by Eurocentral science, more commonly referred to as Western science, that the Atlantic salmon arrived to Lake Ontario about 12,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, when great sheets of ice receded and opened up fresh water to the ocean via a patchwork of streams and rivers. For the millennia, Atlantic salmon provided food for our peoples. The earliest European settlers to Ontario relied on this as well. Some settlers established homesteads and based on the sale of salmon alone. By the 1800s, catches of Atlantic salmon were so extensive that the diary of Elizabeth Simcoe, wife of the first Lieutenant Governor of Upper Canada, remarked that the people caught and sold salmon by the barrelful. Like all salmon, the Atlantic salmon was androgynous, meaning that they spent most of their life at sea but returned to freshwater to spawn. Occasionally, however, the salmon became trapped in lakes and adapted to living in fresh water full time. Such was the case for the salmon of Lake Ontario, which relied on the lakes connecting freshwater streams to lay their eggs. Michi people would honor the runs of Atlantic salmon through ceremony and be thankful each year for the harvest. We would harvest salmon under the spring moons, which we commonly refer to as the fishing moons in our culture, to give rest to the four-legged ones, like the deer and the moose, since we shared a stressful time during the winter, and we'd often harvest those species during the winter, and we needed to have them have a time of rest to have and take care of their young. How do we harvest Atlantic salmon? We use torches and spear fishing. We use fishing weirs, and if you ever are on the shores of Lake Simcoe, there's a historical fishing weir there at Atherley Narrows. You can't see it, it's underwater, but it's still there. Trust us, we know. Harvest limits. We also had harvest limits as Indigenous people. Eurocentric people or Western science people did not believe we knew how to control and manage our resources. We would know through our Indigenous knowledge systems to stop harvesting salmon when the trees grew to the size of a fox's ear. And a lot of people really contest that oral history. I'm not too sure why, because this is our teaching. But if you ever seen the size of a fox's ear, it's actually quite very big. So you need to understand our methodologies. These stream reliant spawning habitats played a major role in the salmon's extinction from Lake Ontario. As settlers grew southern Ontario in the 19th century, they often cut down several of the large trees to make way for farming, resulting in huge erosion and increase in water temperatures that left the salmon streams too warm and too clouded for them to use. The need for power to create power generation the region's bustling cities also spurred construction of dams in nearly all of Lake Ontario's tributaries, blocking the salmon from reaching their spawning sites. Overfishing and pollution also contributed to the decrease of Atlantic salmon population, and our community recounts in the early times around Wilmot Creek flowing through Clark's Township into Lake Ontario. This was an area famous for salmon. Great numbers frequent this area for the purpose of spawning. They were so plentiful that men killed them with clubs, pitchforks. Women would seine them with flannel petticoats, and settlers bought and paid for farms and built houses from just the sale of these salmon. By 1898, the fish had finally vanished from the lake. It was told by our elders that since Europeans treated the fish like an economy and not a equal being to sustain life, um, that the Creator took it away from us. It could no longer occupy Canada because of their arrogance. The Creator punished all those involved with this betrayal by removing the salmon for us to harvest. The Michi Saagiig peoples are often to blame for the removal or decline of fish and other game stocks within our territories, but settlers need to look a little closer to home on their behaviors within our homelands. Since the 1940s, various levels of provincial and governments and conservation groups have been trying to restore these Atlantic salmon, but they fail to understand that it was by settler greed and environmental abuse is the reason that we lost the salmon. If we truly want to restore this species, our knowledge keepers and elders tell us that we need to ask for forgiveness through ceremony, look to indigenous knowledge systems for restoration, and create a balance within the indigenous community and the settler community of co-governance. There's a similar story of the whitefish of Lake Ontario, but that is a story for another day. Miigwech.